Join us in welcoming today's panel moderator, Scott Costa, publisher of TED Magazine.
Come and get it. There I've done it. There I've said it. There you have it.
Hi everybody, thanks again for sticking around. We made a nice break, I appreciate it. It's great to see everybody coming back in the room. Again, I'm Scott Costa, I'm the publisher of TED Magazine, which is NAED's official publication. We're going to be talking here for a little bit about, it's such a mean-sounding topic. We're going to talk about data inefficiency. It's like, oh, this is going to get ugly. And it's really unfair to say that. I mean, you guys are working hard and you're doing some great stuff, and so we don't really want to make it sound like we're going to get up here and be like, you're doing it wrong. Let me tell you how to do it right. You know, but we are going to talk about the fact that there's opportunities with the product data that you have, and you should probably try and take a little more advantage of them. And I think we have to keep in mind that, again, our customers are radically changing. The great resignation has certainly come. And as a result, you know, we got to think about these millennials, you know, that we thought were snotty-nosed, enabled kids who didn't know how to turn the page of a book because they had iPads. They're in their 40s now, and they're making decisions, purchasing decisions, for the companies that you're working for. So things are changing. So we really want to, you know, focus, crack down on what our product data is and what it is that we're trying to do. So we certainly want to connect with them. So let me introduce this panel. Which I think I have to hit this so you can see them. Oh, I don't have to do anything. I just have to stand up here and ask questions. Let me introduce the panel. Let me start with this. Erika TenEyck is here. She's our Director of Business Intelligence Programs for NAED. Welcome her. Thank you, Erika. Sit over there, please. Carol McGlogan is here. She's the President and CEO of Electrifed Canada. Hi, Carol. Good to see you. Don Leavens is here. Don is the Chief Economist and Senior Vice President of Business Intelligence for NEMA. Hi, Don. Nice to see you again. Jim Johnson is here. Jim Johnson is the President and CEO of NEMRA. My friend Denise Keating is on the panel. Denise is not the President and CEO of NEMA, which it says on the board. Did you get promoted? What happened? Denise is not. Denise is the Vice President of Customer Success for IDEA. I knew that. Threw me a curveball, which is pretty cool. And Tim Spino is here. He's the President and CEO of E2E Summit. Tim, thanks. Good to see you, man. And just so you know, Satya Sanivarapu is not here. He's in an Uber. He's on his way. So randomly, when some guy comes up and sits on the stage, you know that doesn't mean we just let anybody come on up here. He's on his way, and he should be here in a minute. So I want to get started with Erika TenEyck. There's some interesting research that you need to know about. Both Erika with NAED and Carol with Electrified Canada put together some research about product data and about customer needs of your data, and I think you need to see it. It's really important. So I'm going to step aside. Erika, step on up. Let me give you you got the thing? Okay. Erika TenEyck, everybody. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Hope you're having a good day so far. So I'm here just to highlight some results from our research study on NAED's journey map of product data. And this really stems from a process we started about 4 years ago when we started to explore digital transformation for the industry and what kind of opportunities it holds for us, not only for our customer experience, but operational efficiencies as well. So we've explored some different avenues with this particular topic, and we've made some efforts recently to map out the processes in everything that we do. Because there's certainly some gaps and some room for improvement. And one of those things that we did was certainly with product data, because this is a perfect system. I got one laugh. It was good.
I laughed.
Thank you. A perfect system, and there's some room for improvement. So we wanted to explore what this looks like, because to know where we're going, we have to know where we are. So some of the questions that we wanted to ask and supported with the foundation funds was, who's involved in each stage of the product journey? Who actually creates the product data that informs everything that the channel does? What are the practices and processes involved with that? What time does it take to clean and process that kind of data? What improvements can be made? So those are the kinds of questions that we asked. And how we got there is we wanted to do a journey map. Now, we talk a lot about what happens at this stage and at this stage and this stage, but we wanted to map out all of these things so we could identify those gaps and look for improvements. So I know this is kind of an eye chart, but if you download the report, you can take a close look at it when you have a chance. But we wanted to do this in a couple different ways. Let's look at those details in line in that timeline of what it looks like. Identify friction points. Again, I know this is a perfect system, but there are some hangups, aren't there? Everyone in this room can probably attest to something that they've encountered probably in the last 24 hours that has made their job just a little bit more difficult. Those are going to translate into some costs for the industry, certainly from productivity, from time, and from people. What does that look like? And along the way, looking at best practices, because not every product data is created equally. There's some really good things happening that people are doing to have some checks and balances when it comes to product data. Because ultimately, higher quality product data is going to drive those opportunities. So how did we go about this? We partnered with Gold Research, and we interviewed a lot of manufacturers and a lot of distributors and customers and product syndicators, including IDEA, to talk about some of those areas that are challenging. So we came up with 9 friction points, including incomplete data, inconsistent data, not enough resources allocated to make sure that this is an easier process for everyone. Also notice there's a lack of data quality KPIs. How do you benchmark yourself? How do you measure yourself and if this is going well? Lots of manual data is being provided, and that takes up a lot of time in terms of enhancing and cleaning it for your systems. So the cost associated with this, after looking at some of the factors involved, it is a minimum of $2 billion. Billion with a B. That is costing the industry with poor product data quality. I mean, I read that number and I was astounded. And that's just the minimum. That's probably just the tip of the iceberg. It's probably closer to 4 to 6 billion. So what are some of the factors impacting those costs? Certainly product data management cost. At least the distributors that we talk to, they have someone working part-time every single week to clean and enhance data. So those 20 hours add up to 1,000 hours a week that you're paying someone to clean data. Just think of scaling that up to even bigger companies that have more resources. You could be doing other things, couldn't you? So let's take a look at that. Also the number of returns and the related costs associated with that. Think of you when you're personally shopping and you get a product, you order it online and it's not what you wanted and you have to send it back because the product description was wrong. Or I know in my case, I'm ordering pants and you have to order like 5 different sizes because you don't know which one's going to fit. So you get the one that fits and you send them all back. That happens in B2B as well. Also reduced e-commerce results. If you don't have great product information on your website, either you're not going to get that sale and they're going to go somewhere else, or they're not going to order as much. Just going to get what they need and not upsell at all. So those are the different things that we found that were impacted by poor product data quality. Again, a lot of people have great ideas and some best practices in terms of how we can overcome some of those challenges. So an enhanced data model, giving clarification about the processes and roles that are involved with the creation and deployment of product data, automated processes with PIMs, and of course getting syndicated data from IDEA and all the other different programs that they have for you, because ultimately that is going to drive opportunities. So there's a lot more in the report. I just wanted to touch on what those look like and how this is just one process within the overall supply chain that we're working on to create some opportunities and inefficiencies. So you can scan that QR code, it goes right to our website, log in with your information, and you can download it. And I'm around for the rest of the conference if you have any questions or would like to discuss it more. Thank you.
Yeah. And let's, 3 things that I want to get into. And Carol's got some great information too about customer buying habits that I want to get into in a second, but 3 things that I think we need to jump into when we're talking about that data. First thing is, Erika was actually nominated for a national award for that data, for that research that was done. So this is nationally recognized research for you. Secondly, as the slide says, free. You can get it for nothing. And if you're having a hard time with the QR code or having a hard time with NAED.org, whatever it might happen to be, there's NAED people who are at the registration desk over there. We'll walk you through the process to make sure you can go home with this data. That's the second important thing. Third thing is, let's talk about $2 billion for 30 seconds. And I apologize if folks have heard this before, but let's hang in there so we don't know what the number is that we're talking about. If I gave Erika $1 a second, $1, here's another second, another dollar, In 22 days, she would have $2 million. There's roughly 2 million seconds in 22 days. If she said, keep going because I want to get to 2 billion, it would take me 62 years to get to $2 billion. That's the number that we're talking about in inefficiencies. So that's important. Like, I want a piece of that. I'm sure you want a piece of that. So know that this is nationally recognized information and data, and we're talking about $2 billion that, and we're going to provide you that information for free. So make sure that you're taking advantage of this as we move forward, because there's value here, and there's ways that we can help you out to get at least your piece of that $2 billion. So Carol, now let's get into, again, the research that you've done with Electrofed Canada to talk about our contractors, how they buy, and what we need to know about them.
Thank you. So before I start, I'm going to confess I'm not a data person. I'm a marketer at heart. Marketing and sales is my background, and I manage EFC. However, what I am passionate about is customer experience. And I think we're all here today because somebody 25 years ago, or a group of people that we learned this morning 25 years ago, realized that customers needed something different and that we needed to change, and data and digitization was part of that change. So we created a research project in 2021, and it was all about taking a look at the impact of COVID. And we did it on the workplace. How did COVID impact buildings? How did COVID impact what employees wanted, because we were all working from home? And then next was, how did it impact customer experiences? So we knew that customers didn't have the physical experience with their manufacturers or their distributors for a couple of years, and in Canada especially so. And we also knew that there were major supply chain issues. So they always say that habits form when things happen, and there was a lot of things happening, and we wanted to understand what was going to be the output. So we asked the question, where do you go for new product information in this post-COVID world? Less than 30% of sales of contractors, and we interviewed, we had 1,000 contractors participate in this, by the way. So less than 30% of the contractors rely on sales reps for new product information. So if they're not relying on their sales rep, they're going to the manufacturer's site, they're going to the distributor's site, and they're going to Google. So when you think about that, the sales rep was a human connection, and now the only connection they have were those sites, often, and what I think is that the data then becomes the mini salesperson. If your data didn't show up, guess what? The salesperson didn't show up, because that's the new world that we were in. When it came to systems integrators and industrial OEMs, they're dealing with more technical product. They wanted a higher touch type of environment, and that made sense when we heard that type of response. And when I think about data and when I think about what's needed, it always has to revert back to what evolution is the customer going through. We heard from our previous speaker that it was all about breaking through different experiences, finding the pain points. What are the pain points for our customers, and how can we solve them? Then, no surprise to anybody in this room, online purchases continue to rise. So 40% of contractors purchase from distributor sites, and over 2/3 were expecting that they would buy at least 20% online from distributors in the next 12 to 18 months. For systems integrators, 20% made purchases from distributor sites, and 80% prefer to make their purchases from the branches. But industrial OEMs, 80% from distributor sites, and over 20% expected that over 80% of their purchases were going to be online from distributor sites. The data's not there, the sales rep's not there. And I remember I've actually spoken about data synchronization a couple of times at EFC, twice, once 20 years ago and another time I think it was 10 years ago. And 10 years ago I talked about my experience of taking a look at a new car. And there was a consolidated website where you could compare cars against each other. And I knew this one particular model did have this one particular feature that I was interested in. But when the comparison came up, that model did not show the feature in the comparison. I knew it was there, but to me, that salesperson for that model didn't tell me it was there. So if I had only relied on that digital environment, I would not have selected that model. It was only because of my other experience that I selected the model. So data becomes the salesperson. Supply chain issues, it was crushing, and it's still affecting our industry. And the hypothesis, so when we go into the research, we have thoughts, and the thought was, you know, we think that the biggest market share shift in most recent years is happening right now during COVID because of supply chain, because people are forced to go somewhere different. So what we were concerned about was, is it happening in the specification side? Is it happening with contractors? And it was yes to both. So 54% sourced alternative products from new suppliers because they couldn't get it from their traditional suppliers. And I know we're all buyers ourselves, and think about all the personal purchases where we were exposed to new brands or new stores or new channels because we couldn't get what we wanted personally from our existing channel. So within our channel, 38% went to other distributors, some went to direct manufacturers and agents, and then they went outside the channel to DIY, to offshore, and so on. The job still needs to get done. The building is still going up, the electrical products are still getting in there. The excuse can't be, I just can't find it. You gotta find it, and if you can't find what you wanted in the first place, you better find a pretty good alternative. So that is a significant impact. And we wanted to measure this. We wanted to be able to measure this with stats, and we weren't able to get down to that level. But we found this out. Over 70% of the contractors said they will likely continue sourcing products from new suppliers once the supply chain issues have resolved. So think about yourself. A lot of times when we look at things from B2B, we think, oh, B2B is different from B2C. Well, no, it's not. We're all human beings. We're B2C at night. We're B2B during the day. When somebody gets you out of a jam, gets you out of a supply chain issue, whether it's for your personal or your business life, you want to be able to pay that person or that company back. You want to be able to express gratitude in some form. You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. You've just opened the door for alternative products and alternative channels, which are your competitors. Supply chain shortages and purchasing trends, industrial OEMs, more likely for the OEMs are going to stick with their specs, and that's understandable. It's technical products, it's going into their manufacturing processes and so on, but they were also being exposed to new suppliers with products within their own spec. When it came to systems integrators, they're less than likely to break the spec. And they also, however, sourced alternative products. So the only message that I think we're delivering here in terms of supply chain is the fact that we are continuing to have problems today. We will have problems tomorrow. And how is our data and how is our customer journey supporting that substituting process? We need to be able to give people the option to substitute easily. And when I take a look at all of this, it's what pain points are customers going through? We heard about the pain of the taxi cab earlier today. And to me, pain almost equals innovation, because when you solve that pain, then you have something brand new. So what are the pain points that our customers are going through today? What are they going to be going through tomorrow? And how do we remap that journey? And that's going to involve data, for sure. How is it structured? What are we presenting? The completeness. It's not good enough just to put your A items up there anymore. You've got to do more than that. So that's it for mine.
Good stuff. And so if folks want to get their hands on some of this research, can they track you down? What can they do to see some of this?
Yep, you can track me down, and I believe we have this research on our website, which is open to all. So it is called the Impacts of COVID, I think. But so look for the COVID on the website under research, and you'll be able to find it, and it goes through a number of different subjects.
Great. So we've reached the stage of we're winging it part of this panel conversation. So, you know, we planned so hard, and now the moderator's like, yeah, we're doing this. We're going to get into supply chain issues, replacement parts, and all that stuff in a second. We're also going to introduce Satya Sanivarapu, who just walked in the door. Come on up, Satya. It's great to have you get here. I know you've had some travel issues. Satya's here. Let's track back again now. Again, the moderator's going a little bit crazy. Jim, I want to bring this up with you as again, we're talking about product data from the manufacturer rep side. Kind of give us what you're seeing, sort of what your representatives are telling you in terms of product data, inefficiencies, what's efficient, what's working, what's not. Where are we at? Yeah. So need a mic.
There we go. So as you started the conversation, you said those nerdy young folks at iPads. Here I am. I fit two of those at least. You know, reps typically are the first point of contact in the field from the local distribution. They're the local people that work with them. And they want the data. In fact, they need the data. But there's so many platforms that are out there that we all use, and they're all good platforms, but they're not connected. And that creates a lot of time and inefficiency and waste. And then is there trust in the data that they're getting? And representatives sometimes don't get all that data. They have to make phone calls. And from a contractor perspective, we'll talk a little bit about outside the gate, inside the gate later, but it's all about time. Labor is time. Labor is where a contractor makes or breaks on a job. And getting that data quickly to them in real time is the crux of the matter I think we're all trying to address here today is we have the data, but can we facilitate getting the data to everybody in real time and provide that to the contractor who's ultimately the customer, because at the end of the day, a contractor bids a job right here, and that's the deadline. That date does not move. Every time we delay or get inconsistent or inaccurate data to that contractor on the job site, that compresses the time that the labor can work and get that project completed. This date does not change. And that has ramifications for everybody in the channel, distribution, manufacturers, manufacturer reps, and ultimately the owner who the contractor reports to. So from a representative perspective, you know, we are an extension of the manufacturer. We are partners with the distribution partners in the field. Our goal is to get the product shipped on time, accurately, and convey that information so the contractor can get off the job in time.
So let's talk about that. And Tim, you know, I don't want to steal too much. Josh Bone's going to be here tomorrow to talk about contractors. But Tim, I want to tap it. You're on the contractor side. You know, most jobs, when I mean most, I mean more than 50% of jobs for contractors are over budget and past deadline. And that's what they have to deal with almost every job that they're dealing with. So from a contractor side, when you've got data, again, you need to get parts, you need to get items. You know, how essential is the product data? What are the things that you hear?
Well, thanks, Scott, for allowing me to be on this panel. And this is probably the first time most of you have ever heard of the company E2E Summit. So just replace NECA, National Electrical Contractor Association, with that. I've been working with NECA ever since 1997, but also on the supplier side. But since 2012, starting my own company, I work exclusively with the contractors to help them become more profitable. And before I answer your question, the reason why I'm up here is I was selected to help facilitate, actually the first time ever that I think ever, a task force between NAED, NEMA, NECA, and NEMRA, and the direction that we were given was reimagine supply chain. That's the direction we were given. So that's like boiling 3 oceans. So anyway, I'm involved in that. I'm facilitating that. And so, you know, really to answer your question, I spend all my time with contractors, every day, all day, for the last 25 years. They just want it on time and cheaper. That's the easy one, but I'm going to go more than that, right? Okay, that's what they're going to tell you, and obviously. But I think the most important thing that they have told me since COVID and with all the supply chains, they want to be able to trust the information. That's all they want. They want, if you quote 16 weeks, give or take 2 weeks, it's going to be there. They want to trust the information. Right now, they can't trust it. And they're trying to blame everybody, but it's any single person's fault. There's so many things going on. The last thing is they hate surprises. So what crushes them is when they actually in bid day won the job based on the estimate, and what they produced in bid day to win that job, that price has changed, they accept 100% of that risk. 100%. And these contractors, 90% of them are less than $25 million revenue, 90% of the market. They don't have coffers like that. Cash flow will put them out of business. I guess the last thing, what they're asking for that they're not articulating yet, but I know they're asking for this. This is like the faster horse thing from Henry Ford. They want you to be preemptive, proactive. They don't want to know when they have all their manpower on a site ready to do that job and that install, and 2 weeks prior to that, they're not getting the most important part. And usually it's a small part that doesn't complete the system, a little tiny transformer that no one in the supply chain, in the whole ecosystem has sweated the details to figure out if it's coming. They want someone to be very proactive that say 6, 8 weeks before, hey, we have a problem. Let's get together a plan together to make sure that we preempt the fact that probably in 2 weeks, you're going to have a crew standing with their thumbs you know where. So.
Great, and I want to get into, Satya, I want to get into, first of all, the manufacturer side in a second, but Satya, I want to ask you first. Thanks for coming, by the way. It's great to see you. I want to ask you about the digital necessities of manufacturers and distributors in the future. Like, what are, I think that there's I don't want to call it hesitance, but, oh my gosh, if I have to invest in AI, if I have to invest in, oh geez, we're talking about big numbers here, but it's really not. And what are the necessities from distributors to make sure that they're meeting customer needs when it comes to digital capabilities or data capabilities?
So firstly, thank you for having me on this panel. I was able to make it just in time, just like supply chains like it. So what Tim mentioned about what contractors want us to do, to 8 weeks ahead, have, give visibility. For all that, you need a connected supply chain. And it is a very difficult thing. It's not something you talk about and that happens, right? The biggest challenges to a connected supply chain today are legacy systems, data silos, change management. Part of NAED's role in enabling this industry to digitize is to address these 3 areas very broadly. Change management is often neglected. The way people behave, natural inertia to change, companies embody that behavior, and they're also resistant to change. For example, you may have a legacy system that you don't want to make the decision to upgrade. Part of the challenge is today's tools are not capable of probably interoperating with all the variety of systems that all the players in the supply chain have. To be able to achieve an interconnected business end-to-end, manufacturers, distributors, contractors, it is effort. And it is continuous effort on cleaning up your data, not just your product data, your master data, your transactional data, to ensure that all your data is accurate, it's consistent through the supply chain, and you can trust it and it's secure. The moment you connect a supply chain end-to-end, security becomes a big issue, right? So data is the currency you need to manage end-to-end. It is not an easy journey. And there are a lot of things that need to be addressed slowly. The big elephant in the room is change management and your legacy systems that distributors are stuck with today. I'll stop there.
Okay. All right, well, let's pivot a little bit. Thanks, Satya. We'll get back to that, I'm sure. Let's pivot a little bit, and this is the part where the manufacturers in the room start, screaming, preach to me, Don Leavens, preach, because electrification of this country is not an easy task from the manufacturer side. There are a lot of requirements, necessities that need to be done. Don, take us into what sort of, I guess, the standards are, what the regulations are, what manufacturers have to do to continue to produce product data and what it's taking them, what the effort is these days.
How long?
Exactly, I know.
Well, thank you for having me on this panel today. But I think that from the manufacturer standpoint, as Carol noted, that we've just come out of the lockdown, and it took us, everyone by surprise, and we're still reeling from that, and we still have long back orders, as many of the distributors and other folks recognize, of more than a year. But at NEMA, we're engaged in several ways on the matter, and one of the first ones is, okay, we've got this problem, and the supply chain is resolving. Some of the biggest aspects of it are resolving. The semiconductor problem was huge, and now a lot of that has gone, is slowly working to our advantage. But what we're worried about is the future, and so we worked with the Boston Consulting Group, who came and looked at all of our industries, the electrical industry, from the various utility, from the building supply, from industrial, and looked at, we're more upstream facing and looking at what are the supply constraints that we're facing between now and 2030 based on this nearly $400 billion of stimulus directly in our space in the United States. To electrify the economy, and what does it mean for our manufacturers? Are we going to get those supplies? And what they found out is, what they're suggesting is that the average rate of price increase for our bill of materials is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 to 10% every year between now and 2030, and that is going to supersede any inflation expectations for that time period. And that's the good news. The bad news is that 25% of that bill of materials is coming from uncertain geopolitical areas in which we're not going to be able to have insight to tell the distributors and everyone else, when is that electrical steel going to arrive? Why are your transformers delayed? Why is the switchgear delayed? Well, we can't get our hands on a lot of these rare earth materials. We can't get it on a shortage of electrical steel in the United States. And what can we do to correct that? So,
real quickly, is there still ongoing documentation that needs to be provided with some of these rare earth materials? What does a manufacturer still have to do to provide product data on rare earth materials that are coming from other countries?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, and because now there's a lot of regulatory environment about where are these minerals coming from, and we have conflict mineral laws, and we've been IDEA has been working on flagging that in our data slots so that we're able to keep track of that. There's also the carbon emission reduction and your carbon footprint and being able to take track of that. So we face a lot over the next 10 years to overcome, and it's going to affect supply chain. And oh, by the way, everything that they just forecast was a straight line forecast, assuming there aren't any changes. And we already know on the energy storage side, on the battery side, that there have been innovations all along, that lithium and cobalt have been a resource that is in scarce supply, and so people are trying to substitute around that. So this gets into this whole issue that we're going to find over the next 10 years. We thought we saw a lot of substitutes during COVID. I think we're going to see a lot more substitution in the upstream, also in the downstream, as we got what we wanted. We wanted to electrify America, and we got a huge amount of money for it. But the bad news is everything is blooming at the same time. We have the EVs, we have the grid, we have every aspect that we wanted for solar, for renewables, but all of it are bidding against the same limited set of resources domestically. And the challenge from the administration is everything must be built in America and must be bought in America. And so that makes it very difficult for us to do sourcing as well.
So, Tim, go ahead.
The Boston Consulting Group report, is that an internal or is that available to the public?
For Boston Consulting, it's internal.
Cliff notes? No.
So but Don, getting back to that, again, everybody's talking about the electrification of the United States and the opportunities with EV that I think everybody is hearing about. How does that translate to labor for manufacturers in terms of, again, product data, in terms of amount of hours it's going to take to actually provide the information needed to just get it on the market?
Absolutely, and I think that's one of the reasons we're a big supporter of IDEA and contributing to them, because we want to get that cost out of the channel, and managing those data sets and having accurate data is a big part of what we're trying to do with the distributors and with IDEA in best practices, I think one aspect of that, and we'll talk about it I think later, was that harmonized data model. We're looking for, because we have so many, our manufacturers have so many different partners who use different languages, different platforms, and for us it's a big cost to prepare all of our data in various, to fit into various platforms, and so we're looking forward to this development that IDEA is very much along the way in terms of improving, harmonizing our data, so we only have to do it once, and we're able to submit the data and have it applicable for everyone. And I think the other aspect, we heard it from Robbie earlier this morning, is about artificial intelligence and the large language models, and I think this is maybe our salvation yet in terms of finding a faster, quicker way to organize data, to make it available and have it more accurate and cut cost out of the channel. Right.
So Denise, Don called you out. Give us an idea here when we're talking about IDEA, and again, eliminating some of that cost and providing the digital data. Where does IDEA come into play again that's going to help our manufacturers and our distributors with that information?
Okay. Well, first, again, I enjoy being here. It's great to be on a panel of such esteemed colleagues. And for those of you who know me, you'll know that I love data. And for those of you who don't know me, probably by the end of this panel, you're going to know I love data. And I love data because of the power it has to transform how we do business and how it impacts the decisions that we make every day in our business, from the beginning of the supply chain all the way through the supply chain. So IDEA is also part of the Connected Supply Chain initiative, and I know that our CEO, David Oldfather, has been an integral part of those discussions. But as we start to look at the supply chain, and we look at where manufacturers are, and we look at the data that's available on our distributor websites, I think one of the gaps that we often see in the industry today is the richness of the data that is on the manufacturer website, and the gap, or what we don't see present, on the distributor website. So one of the first things that I think we really need to do is to close that gap. You know, when we talk about digitizing data, I think most companies in this room recognize how important it is, but I think we have to take it a step further and say, you know, if I'm making the investment in my website and in my systems as a manufacturer, how can I digitize that data so that I can share it and make it work for me in the industry? And IDEA, of course, is kind of that mechanism to make that happen. So manufacturers can provide their data to a single place, and distributors have one place to extract that data. And again, I don't think that there's any value to the data that's being provided or extracted until you put that data into motion. And it's how you put that data in motion that's going to drive the content that is needed to be provided. So as I'm listening here on the panel, we're talking about the future of IDEA or the supply chain. You know, we're talking about BIM, we're talking about EPD, we're talking about ESG, we're talking about those supply chain shortages. And I think at some point, Scott, you're going to give me an opportunity to talk about how we might help with those supply chain shortages and finding those alternative products. I don't know if you want me to
No,
hit
I'm
that
not.
now.
No, we're going to get to it in a second. I'm just
Okay, yeah,
We
all
will
right.
get that, but let's get further into that, Tim. Again, Denise mentioned again, and Don mentioned again these, you know, I don't want to call them minute product data points, but again, product data points about country of origin and things like that. From a contractor side, I would assume that there are things, projects where it's like, again, nobody wants to buy solar panels from a labor camp in far western China. But how important is that data? I mean, every minute piece of it from the contractors when they're actually doing their shopping online.
I don't want to put words in their mouth, but I will tell you, they want it to be oversimplified. They, a lot of times, don't care. They want the product at the right time, at the price that they estimated. Yeah. And I'm sorry to be a broken record here, but yeah, they do have certain standards when they start the project and estimate the project and design the project. But here's the trend. The entire trend of the entire project delivery model has put all the risk on the contractors, all the liquidated damages, all those right now with the owners over the last 30 years. They have constricted the delivery model or the delivery expectation of just about every project there is. They're much more litigious. They're much more financially sound minded. And I would tell you, then you go to the engineer, and the engineer designing the project under those criteria, you know what they did? Boy, faster schedule, litigious, they're holding me accountable. It's financially, they're looking at, you know, my KPIs and financial. I'm just take all this risk down to the contractor. So at the end of the day, the contractor's managing risk, right? And they are really looking to make sure that they can perform their job with the product and availability at the costs that they estimated it.
Satya, does BIM modeling, we mentioned it a minute ago, does BIM modeling eliminate some of that risk? And what can we do to support that to try and make sure that, again, we have more satisfied customers?
Yes, to kind of address what Tim mentioned out here, that there's an opportunity to train the customer on digital here. If you look at the supply chain, the manufacturers will realize the value of going digital, the distributors do. At the end of it, the customer is just saying, enable my business, take out the cost, help me, share the cost with me, give me the solution, right? Not the problem. Don't leave the problem with me at the end. So that is what the contractor is screaming loudly. So there is, and if you look, the contractor is not as tech savvy as some of us think we are, you know, with our mobile phones and all the apps that we have today and the way we interact with digital as a consumer. There is an opportunity to train the customer in how to engage digitally here. And manufacturers and distributors need to take that step forward to provide solutions using data that is clean, that is harmonized, that is accurate, that is consistent, and to be able to provide a solution to the customer out here. So the message is big opportunity to train the customer. They don't know how to use it. We have solutions, and we work with them to engage with them digitally. I think that's the way forward.
Go ahead.
I think that transparency goes up the channel as well, because distributors are also taking on that risk when they source products to get it to that site, because they have a deadline that they have to meet. So I think it benefits everyone to have that transparency to know where it goes.
Actually, I wanted to talk a little bit about with the contractors. There's two different types of markets. There's one is a project market and a specification market, where you're following a specification, and then oftentimes, you know, when we think about supply chain issues and you can't supply the product that is on the spec, it is often the contractor that provides an alternative. And when you provide an alternative, then you're taking on more risk, because you have to make sure that that alternative meets the original specification that was created by the engineer, architect, designer, or whatever. So although they may say, I don't need that information right now, as long as they're in charge of the spec and they're in charge, or the product is readily available, within all of the documentation, then it's really just providing information. Once they have to start to play a role of substitute, alternative, semi-specifier, then all of a sudden the game changes and they need to provide much more information and take on more risk intellectually and from a design perspective than they would otherwise.
And I think from a contractor standpoint, that's where it's really important, that substitution experience, because when they are substituting or having the team or their group of stakeholders are saying, hey, we're going to go with this substitution, it's a minefield. And that's where if it's not properly approved up the chain and by the electrical engineer, it'll be rework. And they'll have them rip out all the installed system. So it's just a minefield. That's where product data is very, very important.
I was just going to add to that. Coming from the background early on, I started in the contracting business. It's not that contractors want to produce change orders, contrary to some beliefs out there. That is not what their mode of operation is. That's a complete mind shift and difficult for them to do. Maybe it's a good time to talk about a little bit about outside the gate, inside the gate that I mentioned earlier. So, successful project completion begins with having forward visibility on key data points and real-time indicators. That's how a contractor manages their jobs. I think you'd agree with that, Tim, right? So outside the gate, think of it this way. That's the planning and the preparation. That's what defines that stop point that says to the owner, here's when I'm going to complete this project by under these cost conditions with these products. That's planning preparation. Inside the gate is scheduling that labor. And we all know how tight the labor market is for the contractors today. There's a shortage of like 300,000 electricians, and it's only going to grow. So making sure they utilize their labor, that is where contractors break or make a job. So getting them inside the gate is getting their scheduled labor organized and also getting their work done. So I went to a good friend of mine, a colleague, that's the president or the CEO of NECA, David Long, and sat down with him to make sure that I got his voice on this panel. And I want to share with you what he felt were some of those key data points and real-time indicators that contractors feel they need to have outside the gate and then once they get inside the gate. So I'm going to share this. This is from the NECA CEO. So outside the gate, full access to specification and installation documents. Full access to all the data files. And when I asked him about the data files, I said, don't you get those right now? He goes, we get Dropbox links that we have to sort through thousands of pages to find the specific product we need. And to Satya's comment, these guys on the job site don't have that technology available to go sift through all that. They just got to have that, right? And then really what's important to them is the lead time and the delivery dates. That's important because now they're moving inside the gate based on lead time and delivery dates. So once they get in the gate, that just carries over. The most important part is that real-time information, updating it, the tracking, and the back orders. And this is where sometimes we have that disconnect in exchanging the data, is sometimes we're reluctant to say, yep, it's going to be a little bit longer than we think. And remember what I said earlier. Every time we change or delay, that period for the contractor to get that job done is compressed. And that brings liability to everybody in the channel. And then they need access to O&M manuals, those are operation and maintenance manuals, and warranty data. But if I could just frame it really simply, I think, Tim, you've worked with David as well, very well. The contractor's mentality is give me as much data as you can give to me as accurately the first time as you can so I can get on the job and get off that job on time or ahead of time and don't have a callback. So they don't want to do those change orders because this creates a whole level of complexity that they didn't take into account early on. So from David Long, I just want to share that that's the NECA perception of what they need outside and inside the gate.
Jim, get further into that with me. In terms of, again, I don't want to call it honesty, but I want to say, hey, you know what? You're going to get product X in 2 weeks, and then 2 weeks passes, and it's like, yeah, it turns out it's going to be 6 more months.
Yeah.
How do we fix that?
you know, that's why we're here, right? We're trying to figure that out. And I want to make sure it's clear. Sometimes the data and the real-time indicators are there, and we get them. But we have a third entity that we rely on for communication and data, and that's the trucking companies and the carriers. Let's not forget about those. The manufacturer can do everything right. The distributor can do everything right. The manufacturer rep can connect those two and convey the information to the contractor correctly. But if the trucking company misships, or how many of you heard this? Oh, it's been delivered. No, it hasn't. Yes, it has. We show it's delivered. That's a disconnect, right? And that's a disconnect we haven't talked about. How do we look at the data from that side of the business? Because, listen, we can do everything right here and have all the processes exchanging data in real time, which is critical. But if that trucking company was maybe independent, is not delivering correctly, and doesn't have the same access to or exchanging the data in real time, everything we've done backstream doesn't matter anymore. So it is not a play just on manufacturers, distributors, and manufacturer reps. There's another party in there. And someone mentioned, I think we've all mentioned, is the data trustworthy? Are we being upfront? Because there's a lot of questions. Is the delivery date really the delivery date? And the only way we can ascertain that is if we have it in real time. Just like when you order something online, you can see where it's at, or your flight tracker on Delta, for example. You know exactly where you're at. That's not lying to you. That's exactly where you're at. We've got to get to some way to figure out how to get to that point, because then that says that is not lying. It's there. It's real time.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to get to the panic button in a second. Carol, I'm gonna start. Go ahead, Denise. What were you going to say?
I have to weigh in.
You
I just
do
have
that.
to weigh in here,
yes.
Because a lot of the data components from NECA, they're available in the Idea Connector. So when we talk about the lead times, we talk about the spec sheets, we talk about the owner manuals, et cetera. And here's one thing I would like to also talk about today, and that is the data that is typically being provided and shared today. There's a huge emphasis and focus on the transactional data and what I would call that pre-sale cycle. So those physical and performance attributes, but that's just the first step in the process. Just the first step. We have to remember that after the purchase, we need to make sure that we're providing the installation instructions, the owner manual, the service manual, the troubleshooting information. And so there are these opportunities for us to all really think about the full cycle, beginning to end, not just the what I would call that pre-sales cycle. And then you're talking about the delivery mechanism and making sure that we have that information available to us. Couple comments. When you take a look at historically where Idea, when we first got together, and I was part of the committee, if you can imagine, and we had a lot of fun talking about bits and bytes and field names and sizes and all of that information. But at the same time, we were also developing standards for EDI within the industry. So we referred to that as EDI Pro. We also, and Tom, I know you're going to love this, we have all these transactions that have been predefined on transportation. So when the delivery goes out of the manufacturer, what truck is it on, what is the tracking number, all of that information is available and in a standardized format. And then above and beyond that, I also want to just make mention of one of our value-added partners, OrderTrack, which is really bringing visibility to that whole cycle. So once the decision to purchase has been made, those purchase orders can go into the system, all of that tracking information is available, and if we can scale that and really have broad participation, it's really bringing visibility to everybody in the supply chain, from manufacturers to the reps, distributors, the contractors, et cetera. So, we've got some things that we're working on today, and we'll still continue to find opportunities to improve on what we're doing there.
I think one thing that would be extremely effective is in the years to come, if we can see more NECA or contractor involvement in Idea in this community. I think you're starting to see it. Josh Bone, who is the executive director of Electri, is part of the advisory or steering committee with David, and I essentially am retained by NECA to facilitate this program. And I think the one thing I've learned is not many people in NECA know what IDEA is. They have no idea. And, well, no pun intended, that was pretty quick. But, but I think it's a great opportunity if we bring the electrical contractor, the ultimate customer, and the design community too. The design community is really important too. And we can bring them into this community. I think it'd be extraordinarily helpful.
Absolutely, and as we're talking about those data components, you know me, I'm going to go back to the office and I'm going to look at what fields we have populated in the IDEA connector. I'm going to see where the gaps are, and then we're going to share that information back out to the manufacturers, right? I mean, there are some really simple things that I think we can do to start immediately closing some of these gaps.
Just one point on the data. So we're collecting a lot of data, and that makes it big data. The tools companies, people, employees typically use, like Microsoft Excel, are not sufficient to analyze greater than 100,000 rows, 200,000 rows of data. What IDEA will give you is that ability to manage big data, right? Transactional data, live, real-time, harmonized, cleaned up. That data is essential. Scott, you mentioned BIM. I didn't proceed down that path only because we're a long way away from BIM to order. But that is what the holy grail for this industry is. For the distributor to really get involved at the design stage with the contractor, with the architect, and recommend products. It all starts with good data. And I think IDEA is that platform enabling that. Well, eventually, we will have to move to a BIM to order, which means we will have to upgrade our systems correspondingly. And this is a longer-term journey. But, that is where we should be going.
So let's stay on that data a little bit longer. And I want to talk about, Denise, just so you know, I want to talk about replacement parts, again, because the supply chain issue is pretty, incredible and elongated. Again, it started kind of at the beginning of COVID, and we're 3.5 years into it, and it's still kind of hanging on to us. So I do want to talk about supply chain issues, but I still want to stay on, again, this sort of contractor panic button of I didn't get what I needed when I need it, and now I'm going to go, again, past deadline, over budget. I got people sitting on a job site. I don't want to repeat what they're doing with their thumbs, but they're making $100 and something an hour plus benefits, and they're not doing anything. So let's get into some of that. Carol, I'll ask you as we get started, getting into some of that panic situation. What is and Tim, I'm going to get to you on this too. What does a contractor do when it's like, okay, I don't have what I need? What's the game plan? What's the play here to say, I got to get products. If that one's not coming, what can I get? What's my replacement? What's the process to say, I need people working?
Well, I mean, I think for all members of the channel, you have to understand the application of the product and what the alternatives and the substitutes are. And you have to understand that all the way through, it's almost like having your backup plan. We know that if this isn't going to happen, this is the backup plan. So when I think about a contractor and how they view a distributor, the distributor is their grocery store. It's where they have that tight connection, and the distributor is really responsible for much of the buying experience. So within that buying experience, and this is where you have to think about innovation and creativity is where are they experiencing pain? What does that pain look like? And then as a data and digital experience community, what do I create that helps solve that? So, it's hard to answer. I guess what I'm talking about is investigating the process and investigating that pain and investigating, well, what do I have to build structurally into my customer experience, my digital customer experience, and then based on that, what am I asking my manufacturers for? From an idea perspective, they've got 1 million fields available, right? 1 million fields available, all sorts of stuff. And when it comes to your distributor site and your manufacturer site, is how am I going to use that to create an experience? How is my experience going to differentiate from the other company? And that's where the people in this room can help create that digital experience and help solve those problems. So I say bring the customer in. Bring the customer in, ask them to outline their pain points, ask them, well, what happens when you're out and you don't have the product? I learned, I actually have a friend whose son came up with an idea that when things go wrong on a job site, he was creating an app with contractors where there would be that one particular item and there would be the 5 distributors that were in their local area with the price and the delivery for that day with that item. So now you're talking about a different type of information model, but then you also have an individual that looked at a pain point and how do I solve that pain point because his father was a contractor. Right.
Go ahead.
Just a comment. I think that's great that you said that. It comes down to that communication piece. Just recently, going back to the contractor hat, if we have the data, it's the consistency in the communication, how we're getting it to the contractor. So we did a test pilot with 3 major contractors, one in the East Coast, one in the Central, one in the West. And we contacted a manufacturer. We contacted the manufacturer rep for that manufacturer. We contacted the distributor. And we asked 3 questions. What's the lead time? When's the expected delivery date? And is there any issues with back order? In every case, the contractor got 3 different answers. That's why we're here, folks. Why do we have 3 different answers from 3 different people in a channel serving the same customer in 3 different markets?
It shows the systems are disconnected.
Correct. Absolutely correct. And that's our challenge, all of us together. We're all in this together. We all are interdependent. No one can do it on themselves. A manufacturer produces products. The distributor provides the products, the shelf, and the service to sell them. The manufacturer reps connect the manufacturers to the distributors. And then together, distributors and manufacturer reps serve the contractors right in the field, serving, training, et cetera. We have to figure this out in that communication piece so that when the contractor calls, that will alleviate a lot of that frustration on the job site. If they get one consistent answer no matter who they call, that helps them scheduling that labor. And folks, that estimate you gave is real. It's even higher than that. So when they have labor sitting out there $100 an hour and they're already short and they're waiting for something, we're all in trouble. We all get the phone call, every one of us in the supply chain. So,
right. So I don't want to interrupt. Go ahead.
I'll just add one point. One thing I noticed: a lot of distributors have e-commerce websites, right? E-commerce sites just to stay up with competition. Your sales are probably less than a percentage through that. But if you can provide that contractor visibility into the order through the e-commerce site, it will help both parties. The distributor can study the customer a lot closer, the customer behavior, and the contractor also gets a single shop where he or she can go and see visibility of their order. And I think you should leverage your e-commerce platforms to give that visibility to the customer using your tools, which means integrating, connecting up the e-commerce with the contractor systems and giving them the login to do so.
So you're talking about redefining a customer experience for any one particular distributor. And the one thing I found, I spent 30 years in the lighting business and was involved in helping with the data for our distributors. The ones that were most demanding got all their data. And we had one in particular in Canada that said there shall be no new product that comes into our operation unless we have all of these fields of data, and they meant it. So guess who got all the data? And guess who got all the fields that they wanted based on the customer experience they wanted to create? And those that said, oh, it's okay, it wasn't a priority for our sales organization, therefore it wasn't a priority for us internally to provide that same amount of information. So being diligent in bringing new products into your basket, in identifying what your experience is, and then being strong in asking for that information, and also being able to communicate the fact that, guess what, if your information's not there, your salesperson's not there. You actually didn't show up.
The data is the salesperson that never sleeps. It's available 24/7, right? And I think too that as we're having this conversation, and I'm hearing just among the panel, we have to have trusted data. We need complete data. We need I think that there are certain data dimensions that really define data quality, and we as an industry need to define those data dimensions and then live by those as we measure it going forward. And I think it is important, you know, we have often focused in the past on the supply chain between the manufacturer and the distributor, and we need to extend that focus both back and all the way down to the supply chain. So I couldn't be more thrilled to be sitting on a panel this morning with NAED, NEMA, NEMRA, NECA. It's exciting. And I just want to make one other comment that when we're talking with the contractors and we're looking at their pain points, I think one of the most important questions that we can ask them is how they would prefer to do business. Because oftentimes we're very focused on how business is happening today, and we look at those things and we try to identify what the fix is. A better question might be, how do you prefer to do business? And what would we need to do to change and provide a user experience that really resonates with the customer?
So wouldn't that, so what you just said, is it time to stop talking about digital transformation and move to digital evolution? How we evolve our digital capabilities and our platforms to work and integrate? I think we've all transformed as in organizations, companies, whether it's through CRM, BIM, ERP systems, you name it. But have we evolved that technology to get what we're here for? To share, or, and I strike the word share, just so you know, I'm sensitive to that word because manufacturers, distributors have information they don't want to share and don't need to share. Let's talk about exchanging data points. Let's talk about providing real-time indicators in platforms that have evolved digitally to allow us to do that.
Breaking the silos of data, right? And the data silos are there because organizations work that way. Every department works individually in manufacturing, distribution. They have their own KPIs. You measure yourself locally, and you're trying to achieve a global optimization. It's not going to happen. You have to look at the entire supply chain globally. You have to make decisions, investments that give you global results, not local results. So breaking those data silos starts with culture within the organization. How you share your data from department to department. You have to start within, and that's when it's going to spread across the supply chain.
Data has to be more flexible, right? Because you still have those contractor customers that are going to call you for something, but they probably went on your website to make sure you had it before they decided to call and order it. So now it's about having more tools in your toolkit to service those customers, whether they want to call or email, whatever they want to do with you. So that's the beauty of data too, is that it gives us some flexibility and some communication avenues that we might not have had before with our customers.
I think IDEA has an opportunity here because when we had this task force of NAED, NEMA, NECA, and NEMRA, we took a look at all the exchange of information, where the exchange of information. You talked about, you asked those three different people, three different distributors, they got three different prices and three different
contractors across the country for lead time, delivery, and any back orders, and got three different answers.
Got three. So the one thing we identified is that's just one exchange. Right now, the data exchange for the design engineer designing a system is for them to literally call their buddy at the distributor saying, hey, are they still selling this? And hey, is this a really bad, backlog? And then also when they're estimating a bid day, they're literally estimating on a fictitious number of price and supply and lead time. Mm-hmm. And that's when actually the contractor is signing liquidated damages contractually. So I think from an idea standpoint, there is a beautiful opportunity for a single point of truth. A single point of truth for the engineer to access and to get a heat map of these particular supply chains or manufacturers, a single point of truth for the contractor at bid day, single point of truth also for everybody within the manufacturer and distributor to be able to go and say, understand from a heat map standpoint, what is the supply chain risk profile for this manufacturer and this product? And oh, by the way, if it's a high risk profile at this point in time, real time, what are the three substitutes that I also need to start looking at and maybe scenario planning for?
Yeah.
Do I get to talk about substitutes yet?
Not yet, because I have one more thing to full circle this, and then we're up to substitutes. And that's this. I want to stay focused on this for one more second. And Don, you don't get to escape. I'm going to start by asking you, just so you know, I'm glad you got the mic. So let's trade places with the people in the crowd today, manufacturers and distributors. And we're talking about all these things, all these products, all this effort that it's going to take. And I would imagine some people are saying, I need more people. I only work 40 hours in a week. All these things that customers are expecting. Let's not forget now that there's $2 billion at stake. And if I can get 1/100,000th of 1% of 2 billion, I stink at math. I'm going to have $200,000 to hire another person or two to help me with my data processing. So Don, starting with you, sort of a chicken and egg thing, what happens first? Do I boldly step into the future and say, I'm going to do all the things that we've talked about up here and sharpen my data and sharpen the process with the 3 different contractors and the 3 different delivery dates? Or do I wait until it's demanded a little bit more and then try and figure out if I'm going to get return on my investment? Boldly stepping into the future, what do? Do I hire first and think I'm going to get a small percentage of that $2 billion? How do I make this happen, potentially meaning I have to add people or add processes?
I think if I knew the answer to that question, I'd be running a company. But I think the thing that we're going to see is this is competitive differentiation. This is how companies are going to and we've been working with ID. I have been working with it for 25 years. So I was there at the inception, and we have struggled. Manufacturers have struggled. There's huge cost in providing data, and now that was just data. Now we're talking about video. Now we're talking about 3D. We're talking about all kinds of other information besides just the raw pricing information or category. And so for us to, for manufacturers to continue to do that, the ones that are good at it, they will invest. They are adding resources in order to do that. And I think that they're going to take market share as a result of that. And I think the market will play it out. It's not something that we have to lecture them. I think they're going to find out pretty quickly that the customer wins, the contractor wins, and that's what we're all here for, is to support and supply all of the equipment on time when they need it. And I think those who are successful are going to win out.
So those who are immersed, anybody can answer, I'm just going to throw it out there. Those who are immersed in, hey, you know what, the technology of the future, yes, I'm going to invest today in what my customer needs in 2020. You know, are they going to start to move ahead of the curve in the eyes of the contractor and the end of the end user? Go ahead.
Well, I mean, our speaker today talked about the moat, right?
Yep.
Says when you lead, and when you lead early, you're building a moat around your business. So this is all about, do you want to be out there and do you want to have the moat, or do you want to be the one on the outside trying to break through the moat? And at the end of the day, this is about a business case. I think we're here at a conference with, I think, 95, maybe all of you are passionate about data. You're already here for a reason. But as you listen to the panel, I'm sure there are frustrations that are going through your head. And you may be saying, if only I had. It would be interesting for us to find out from the audience, what is their barrier? Because I'm sure you know what the right thing is. You know what to do, but what is preventing you from doing that? Is that because the leadership doesn't have the business case? What else do we have to provide as the business case? We talked about cost, but there's also opportunity lost. We haven't measured that yet. You know, and that's where the contractor research came in. And I'm sure any one of the presidents of your organizations would, if they got a call from a customer saying that the salesperson didn't show up, or that they didn't have all of their information, or whatever, that person wouldn't be around for very long. However, the data field wasn't there, and it wasn't right, and it was misrepresented, we'll just leave that one alone. It's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. And so...
I'll just touch on the cost. So in the past, technology investments, digital investments, very expensive journeys, right? So architecture, consultants, implementation, by the time you're done implementing, you're ready for an upgrade. Today, with SaaS, it's changed a little. Your cost investment on technology has moved from a CapEx investment to an OpEx investment. Because with software as a service, your systems, you can move to web-based, cloud-based systems. And those are low-hanging fruit. Smaller companies, mid-sized companies don't have to make the big investments to get reach of technology that can give them the competitive advantage, right, in the SaaS model, because you pay on demand, just like Netflix. So in this new world, adopting technology, cost shouldn't be a barrier, and that's a mindset change.
Okay, Denise, let's start talking about replacement parts now. And let me set the stage, let me reset the stage actually,
Okay.
and then you can do your thing for a little bit. Again, contractor is told he's going to get a product in 2 weeks, and now it turns out it's going to be 6 months. So now there's an issue of, I'm in the scramble mode, I need a replacement part, whatever it might happen to be, that fits so many, again, it fits the specifications, it fits again, what the code is, it fits what, everything that needs to be done has to be exact. And so now I'm in a situation where it's like, well, how do I know what matches up? And then there's Denise. Go ahead.
Okay. So I really want to address it from a supply chain shortage, right?
Right.
When you have these component parts that you can't get in order to make the full product available to your distributor partners and then down the chain to the contractor. We often use words like alternates, substitutions, I'm going to say the dirty word, cross-reference. And there's a distinction between those three terms. Cross-reference is when you are taking one manufacturer's brand and you're crossing away into another manufacturer. But when we talk about alternates and substitutions, I believe that manufacturers have an opportunity to provide that information about their own products so that as we encounter these supply chain shortages, you have and are offering your customers the option to substitute within your own line. And we don't see today a lot of manufacturers providing that level of data. And you have an opportunity to provide the upgrade to that product. So, when I look at the world in which we live in, I don't consider it to be two-dimensional, right? It's this really multi-dimensional world that we live in, and our data should be that way as well. And I think today the view of data is that we often look at it as a single item, right? And Mike, that beautiful slide that you had up this morning with the yellow pages that was really thick, right? We've all had those catalogs, and when customers used to open those catalogs, they could flip through it, browse it, and they could see all of the product relationships for another product. You could see the accessories, you could see the replacement parts, but when companies began selling online, they focused on helping the buyer find a single product at a time, and in doing so, we lost visibility to all those product relationships. We need to bring that visibility back, and we can do that through digitizing the data. You have it available, it's in your catalogs. We now just have to create that into a digital file that we can share throughout the supply chain.
How does cross-check come into play on that then?
Cross-check is really a wonderful program. It has a database of extensive product relationships. And I'll just describe a few of them. So we have accessories, we have the replacement parts, we even provide the information on discontinued parts. And think about this, you have a part, you've discontinued it, and there's no replacement. Now, you want to use the information within your ERP and your e-commerce to communicate that to the customer, because what we have found is that a contractor will go to a distributor website, it's a discontinued part, and what happens? No results found. They get frustrated, they jump from the site, they go to another distributor site, they continue to look for it, they can't find it, they go to the third, they finally make the phone call, then the distributor calls the manufacturer, and the manufacturer goes, oh yeah, we discontinued that 2 years ago, right? We gotta stop that kind of experience. Think about how inefficient that was. So when we talk about getting back a piece of the $2 billion, what a great way to get that back. Get the product relationships in place, share that information, and then it's how you leverage that information in your ERP and in your e-commerce that's going to provide that higher level customer experience.
I don't have all the questions. I don't pretend to. We have a few minutes left. If anybody's got a question, go ahead. Oh, wait, Satya's got a, yeah,
Denise,
go
we're
ahead.
talking, I had this thought that for the first time, the industry has some centralization, an opportunity to standardize, an opportunity to get all your data to one place and that single source of truth. Yeah. A lot of you are here, you're aware of IDEA, its capabilities in terms of data management, data harmonization, the tools it has to manage your data. I think this industry needs that central body to harmonize, manage, standardize data, to drive standardization. That's the big challenge players have today to integrate. There's no standardization. And to standardize, we need a centralized body. And that's why NAED and this entire IDEA journey is about bringing everyone together on one data platform, no matter what technology, what tool you're using. So data, to democratize data across the industry, that's the effort.
I want to echo that. I think hopefully this is not a one-time panel discussion, and hopefully we get more involvement from all of you. This is an important time in our industry, and we're relevant. Listen, this industry, we power. Everything is dependent on what we do. You flip a switch, it's electricity. Everybody has got a hand in that. I think Robbie mentioned in this speak, let's define the principle. Let's define the priorities. Let's define the purpose, right? Get those 3 Ps in there and get collaboration so we can build real-time collaboration in our industry, exchange the information with a lot of confidence in the information being accurate, and then provide a platform that, and David mentioned it earlier in his introduction speech, a platform that provides sufficient risk governance across third-party contracts in the chain. That's what we should be driving to right now. Your competition isn't your peer or colleague. Our competition isn't us up here. Our competition is someone that's eyeing our industry right now saying, when will it become relevant for me to get into this? And then we all become that much less relevant. We have got to get hold of this exchanging data and collaborate and open up those silos, as you mentioned, Satya. Open up the silos and recognize we are in this together. We have a chain under our symbol NEMRA, and the chain represents the link. The strongest link in a chain is the weakest link. If you know someone's not involved, get them involved, because that's going to be the weak link in our whole chain. So I would leave you with just, this hopefully is not one time. This is great to have us all up here, right, but it's also a great opportunity for all of you to start getting input into the 3 Ps that Robbie mentioned.
Yeah. Quick question? Go ahead.
First of all, kudos to the panel. You did a great job. While you all were talking, I'm scribbling furiously with comments. And maybe I'll touch base with Scott later. One of the things that was mentioned was this bit about the timeliness of the data. You guys are all asking for lead time on products and reliable product data. We invested heavily into providing accurate lead time for our products. We reached out to the distributors that we work with. We load this data into the connector down to the level that we know when that data goes in and when it's available to the distributors. We find out that many of the distributors are syncing with the connector weekly, monthly, quarterly, okay? So this whole notion of providing it and being able to consume it is a big issue. Those are the people that download from the connector directly. There are also distributors that rely on other service providers to help them ingest the data. Okay, it is not uncommon to add 6, 12, But if you go to Amazon, they talk about product characteristics.
Yeah.
They talk about companion products, accessories, alternative products, the richness of information. I mean, how many times have you gone to Amazon to buy a product and you actually read the reviews? Okay, imagine that type of experience in electrical supply chain. What does that mean? Okay, what effect would that have? But few distributors even approximate that level of experience in their e-commerce sites. And then finally, there was this great story about the 3 different quotes and the 3 different types of information that were returned relative to a product. We syndicate our data to the connector. Our distributors consume that data. I'm unaware of ever authorizing one of our reps to consume that data. So from that scenario, it seems as though the reps could be potentially out of the loop. So go into a rep and ask them for that information when our primary syndication point is the connector. They're kind of out of the loop. And so maybe bringing them into the loop and bringing them into that whole transaction is one way to ensure consistency.
Amen. And from the rep perspective, they are limited, to your point, absolutely limited. So they can pick up the phone and call the manufacturer direct because they're an extension of your organization, right? Depending on who they call, that's the information they're going to pull in the system, right? Then they call the distributor, who is their partner in the field for you as a manufacturer. It depends where they're pulling the information, who they're contacting. Those are the disconnects. Are every levels of the organizations getting that right data? And we agree wholeheartedly that the manufacturer rep sometimes is the last person to know about it. But as a manufacturer, and I've got the numbers, 80% of the electrical business in the industry goes through manufacturer reps. If manufacturer reps are the last ones to get that information, manufacturers, you're hurting yourselves. You're putting your manufacturer reps in 2 positions. One, to lose the order, but also to be liable for some miscommunication information. Right. That's where I'm coming from, and that's bringing a holistic view. Does everybody in the chain, from inside sales to customer sales to outside sales to regional to vice president, have the same access points? Yep.
And I just want to comment too, John, on one of the, and we've heard it all the way throughout the panel today in terms of how people are describing quality data. And I'm just going to tell you that at IDEA, we're looking at these attributes for quality data. The data needs to be complete. And you have to have the right context when you talk about the completeness of data. You can look at it from a standards perspective and say, oh, I supplied all of the required fields. But completeness isn't about just what your distributor needs or even what the contractor needs. The completeness of data is really defined in how you plan to put the data in motion. And that's what helps you identify the data elements that are required. So completeness of data, accuracy, so that we have the trusted data, timeliness. So John, you're talking about the timeliness, and that's not just about the product data coming in, it's about the timeliness of the data being downloaded, right? Mm-hmm. So we are also looking at reporting mechanisms to report on the timeliness of data. If you're a manufacturer and distributor, you're very familiar with the data integrity cases. You know, we're going to start measuring what's the turnaround time from the time that they're reported to the time that they can get resolved, just as one concept. The standardization, that's one of the things that IDEA, that's what we were built on, were the standards. And we haven't even touched on the Harmonized Data Model today. And we've only got a couple minutes left, but there'll be a panel on that later because different manufacturers have different products that serve different customers in different regions across the world. And that harmonization process that was driven from NEMA and NAED that IDEA is delivering today really enables the supply chain efficiencies for the manufacturer. It's also about normalization. It's going to deliver higher quality data to the distributors. Data needs to be consistent. That's the normalization. It needs to be synchronized. You can have all the data in the world, but if your systems are not in alignment from the beginning to the end of the supply chain, you're going to have problems. And the data needs to be structured in such a way that it's easy to use. Those are some of the dimensions that we're looking at in terms of how we're going to quantify and measure. Am I creating and delivering quality data?
So quick comment. We're going to get rolling, but go ahead.
Okay, so I was waiting for where the contractor fits in on this one, and I was writing it all down. Thank you for saying it needs to be easy to use. Mm-hmm. My suggestion is meet the contractor where they are. Don't give them a link and say you have the data. That means nothing to them. Meet them where they are. They're natives. They're that digital immigrants and digital Scrooges. Meet them where they are and be easy to use.
And thanks for the comment too, by the way. I appreciate it, John. That's great. It's, you know, we're not going to solve the world's problems before lunch, and we're 32 seconds away from lunch. So what I'll ask you guys is this, over the next 5 hours today and your period that you're here, you know, tomorrow, is really immerse yourself in what's happening here. Really immerse yourself in the Harmonized Data Model events that are happening this afternoon and all the education sessions that are, I mean, really dig in. Like, ask questions. Be deeply involved in each education session that you're going through for the rest of the day and certainly throughout the day tomorrow. Spend some time at those tables around the room here and really listen to the conversation to make sure that you're doing this right, that you're doing what needs to be done with your data. And I think if you at least, you took the first step because you came here. If you at least do that, some of these problems are going to disappear for you, and you're really going to learn more about it, and you're going to understand what you want to do to be where you want to be. So a massive thank you to this panel with such amazing insight. I really appreciate everybody doing this. And we are, yeah, we're out of time, so thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you for coming this morning. Don't go too far away. You're invited to join our networking luncheon that will be served momentarily out in the lobby and then back into this room. So lunch is in this same area. Feel free to enjoy now. Thank you.
And my heart